Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Toronto Stars Leafs playoff live chat. We are going to have a great afternoon here of Leaf talk, playoff talk, and there will be fun. There will be great discussion. And best of all, there will be prizes. We want to thank our presenting sponsor before we get started. That is the Chop Steakhouse and Bar. They're very generous enough to provide the incredible prize that will be awarded at the end of this whole thing, which is going to last about an hour here on thestar.com. The prize is incredible. It is a $250 gift certificate to Chop Steakhouse and Bar, plus a couple of Leaf jerseys. I mean, that is incredibly generous, and I know everybody will be sticking around to find out who wins that. The winner will actually be contacted by email after the event is over. But without further ado, it's not just going to be me blabbering on about the Leafs and their 2-0 lead in this first-round series against the Senators. I've got a couple of great co-panelists here, starting off with my guy, Kevin McGran, a longtime Maple Leafs reporter for the Toronto Star. Kevin, how you doing?
Doing great, Dave. How are you?
Very well, very well. It was great sitting next to you during last night's overtime game. And the guy everybody came to see, of course, the featured act in our panel, a guy who knows something about playing overtime games in the playoffs against the Senators. This man played 4 of them, happened to win them all, which is one of the reasons he's a legend around town. He is, of course, Cujo, Curtis Joseph. Curtis, welcome to the panel.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Well, it's great to have you here, Curtis. And why don't we start? I mean, let's take us through you, a legendary goalie, 943 games played in this league. You're third on the Leafs all-time playoff win list among goaltenders. And you're watching the Leafs last night in your home with your family. This game goes to overtime. Does it stir memories? Are you just, are you in the present? How does Curtis Joseph watch a Leaf playoff game against the Senators?
Well, once it goes into overtime, the whole family goes, okay, who you got for overtime? Who's got the winner? And of course, we're all think we're experts. So we all pick a player. Unfortunately, you got to pick one for both teams, but nobody had Max Domi. And I feel bad because I love Max. He's a great kid, and I was very, very happy to see him score last night. So it was a great finish.
Well, I'm sure you have some memories of young Max. We've heard quite a few players. Travis Green, of course, the coach of the Senators, a former Leaf, was talking about his memories of seeing young Max. Do you remember Max as a little youngster hanging out with his dad Ty in those days of the Battle of Ontario?
Oh yeah. So in the green room, or the wives' room that we have. I have 2 boys that are a year older and a year younger. So they'd all play mini sticks during the whole game. And I remember Max. So he's a 95, right in the middle of my 2 guys. So I'd see them body checking Max and playing physical mini sticks. But and then as Max got older, he got bigger and he became a great player. He played for the Don Mills Flyers. And we'd watch him. We'd go, man, this kid is so good. He has a chance to make the NHL. And sure enough, he did. And Max hasn't changed, which is great. He's still a polite. He'll send me texts on random things that maybe happen in my life. So he's an extremely respectful young man, and couldn't happen to a nicer guy watching him smile and his teammates hug him last night.
Yeah, it was a great moment, obviously. Kev, you wrote about it. I mean, what did you make of this finish to a game that the Leafs looked like they were dominating? Suddenly they weren't, and yet they came out with a happy ending.
Yeah, it was really something to watch. I mean, you got to really give credit, I think, to the Ottawa Senators for clawing back into that game and putting the Leafs on their heels in the second period and ultimately tying it. Cujo, I don't know what you think, but I actually thought both goalies played really well. The first 4 goals were all basically deflections or off a body, and I guess that's the kind of goals you're gonna get in a game like that with the stakes so high. But yeah, I don't think anybody really had Max Domi as the overtime hero, with Simone Benoit as the guy leading the rush up the ice. Max, for those, is a great little piece of trivia here. Max and Ty are the first father-son duo to score for the same team against the same team in the playoffs in NHL history. So it's actually pretty a cool little sort of poetic moment for the Domi family.
Yeah, incredible bit of trivia there. So the gist of this hour-long chat, it's an AMA, an Ask Me Anything. I guess it's an Ask Us Anything, and we've already received a lot of great questions from Star readers that we'll delve into. But feel free to insert a question anytime during the live chat here. We'll try and get to as many of them as we can. Curtis, I wanted to start one. There was a version of a similar question from quite a few readers: Eric L., Steve S., Charles J. And the question essentially is about these big playoff moments. And I'll go to Eric's question because it's sort of the one that is phrased appropriately. And his question is: the pressure in Toronto to win must be overwhelming. And how did you cope with that pressure?
That's a good question. It is like nowhere else. The pressure is intense. I remember driving in, to playoff games back in the day, and you could feel the tension as you drive in, and it would cross your mind occasionally, I better not let one in from center, or I'll be the front page of the Star. So there's that kind of pressure. But at the end of the day, we're playing a game that we love. You're in that position because you've earned it, and you've practiced hard to get to this point. And it's like writing a test. When you've studied and studied and
I think we lost Curtis there. Kev, we've still got you. Let's I'm sure the technical difficulties will subside shortly here. Kev, you talk about pressure, and we all speculated about goaltending in this series and how, Anthony Stolarz, the Leafs #1, he hadn't had a playoff start until game 1 of this series. Obviously, I'm just wondering your interpretation of how Stolarz, who's been so good so far, is dealing with the pressure that Curtis was just outlining.
Well, I think Anthony Stolarz has actually been terrific. Like, as signings go, it's one of Brad Treliving's best ones, the way it's worked out. And in the playoffs, I mean, to me, he looked a little bit jittery in the first period against Ottawa in the first game. Like the puck was sort of bouncing around on him a little bit, but I think he settled down really quite nicely. He's a big body and is using his size. Ullmark's a big body, but he's not using his size, not as well. That's why shots are going in high on him. For me, the Leafs have, one of the reasons that they've had so little success in the postseason is the other team has always had the better goalie, right? From Carey Price to Tuukka Rask to Andrei Vasilevsky to Sergei Bobrovsky. The other team, the goalie on the other team had the resume to back up everything he did on the ice, and the Leafs had some good cooling moments from Frederik Andersen, some good goaltending moments from Jack Campbell, but nothing that the other guys were able to offer. And this time it kind of feels like, I mean, I know Ullmark's got a Vezina and a Jennings to his name, which sort of is par for the course for Leaf goaltending opponents. But I think Anthony Stolarz is sort of answering those questions. He's providing better goaltending than the other team, and that's kind of the first time we've seen it. What I'm curious about, and by the way, I loved his body check on Ridley Gregg last night. That roughing penalty was certainly worth it. I've watched it a few times. It makes me laugh. I don't know what Gregg thought. He was skating through the crease with when the puck was way down the other end, but he sort of got what he deserved, if you ask me. The question I have for you, Dave, like, this team has gone tandem-wise all year. I wonder if it's time that, will you see Joseph Woll? Not because anything Stolarz done, just because they've gone. One guy plays 2, one guy plays 1, one guy comes back. Like, it's not the worst question in the world to consider, not the worst idea in the world to consider to put Joe Woll in just for a game. Like, maybe we'll see him, maybe we won't.
Well, I think it's the worst idea in the world, Kev, but who cares what I think? I'd stick with Stolarz, but Curtis is now back with us. The technical difficulties have been eradicated. Curtis, what do you make of the idea that they would go away from Stolarz, given the way he's begun this series?
So if the Leafs go a long way, which we anticipate they're going to go all the way, it's probably a a good chance that Joseph Woll will get some ice time, and that's probably a good thing. You want two goalies that are ready to go. Also, injuries or nagging injuries factor into that, and there's always those, especially when you play 20 something playoff games in like 30 days. So it's not uncommon for that to happen for Stanley Cup teams, and I can see it happening. And who's not comfortable with Joseph Woll playing? Also, Stolarz is an incredible, great start. He's the guy. He's been great all year, but I'm not uncomfortable with Joseph Woll playing either.
Yeah, I think that's a sentiment that is shared around Leafs Nation right now. Curtis, Kevin just mentioned, Stolarz' run-in with Ridley Gregg in the blue paint. Gregg, a known agitator, starts skating through or attempting to skate through the Leafs crease last night during a stoppage, and Stolarz did not hesitate in laying a shoulder into the little man and dropping him to get a roughing penalty. I'm wondering, did that bring up any memories of yours in terms of run-ins with, pesky opponents?
So I always loved it when that happened the first game of the playoffs, because it's a sign of respect. They're telling you, we're going to have a tough time beating you unless we get in your face or run you over. And, of course, when you play against the greats, and you'd hear it in your own locker, when you play against the greats like Patrick Roy or Marty Brodeur, it's like, hey, get in their face, like get them off their game. And so it's always a compliment when they start bumping you in a playoff series. You go, I must be playing well. This is a good sign. So sometimes you could early in a series, you could pretend like you were not that we're actors, but you could pretend like it bothered you, so they'd keep it up. And you want them to do something that's out of the ordinary and not focus on scoring goals. So, I'm sure I've done that a few times, but it's always a compliment when guys are running you because they feel like you're a big factor in the game.
I mean, we're in the midst of a lot of Battle of Ontario nostalgia now, Curtis. I'm wondering, you played 17 games against the Senators in the playoffs in your career. You won most of them. Was there one Senator in particular that really, stands out in terms of being a pest in front of your net?
Not so much in my memory bank as the pest. My job was to keep them off the board as much as I could myself in the defense and coordinate with them. But, Daniel Alfredson is a pest to me because he was the guy who could score goals. He was the guy that could make me look bad. He was the guy that was the thorn in my side. So the offensive guys are who I focused on. They did have some pests, but not so much. Not so much in those series, but they did go to the net hard. But offensive guys, to me, were the guys that really stood out.
Okay, great. Well, let's get to another reader question here, guys. I'll throw this one to you, Kev. You can start it off, and we'll pass it to Curtis after you give your take. And Bruno emails in and says, given the lack of playoff success of this iteration of the Maple Leafs over the past 9 years, why is this year different?
Well, I'll start with that. First of all, I already talked about the goaltending. Like I said, the Leafs, I think, have the better goaltending in Anthony Stolarz' overall mark. So that's one thing that's different. The other thing that's different is the way the defense is built. Like Chris Tanev and Jake McCabe is probably the best shutdown pair we've seen in 20 years. Like, I couldn't even go back further than that. Those two guys know what they're doing when it comes to blocking shots and clearing the zone, etc. And the third thing I'll say is I think Craig Berube has been an incredible influence on this team. This team has always struck me as sort of uptight in the playoffs, like nervous. And I think maybe some of that had to be Sheldon Keefe, who was a hard guy to play for sometimes. He was a very demanding coach. And Craig Berube, I think he's equally demanding, but he just goes about it in a different way. And I think there's a calmness to him that suggests you can make a mistake and he's just going to trust you'll get it right the next play. And I think he's calmed the jitters that I've associated with this team in first rounds before.
Curtis, what stands out to you?
So Kevin made some great points, and I agree with those. And so I got to try and add to them. Really good points. Goaltending, definitely. I'm a big fan of great goaltending in the playoffs. You have to be able to steal a game. So A+ to our goaltending. And then the defense, nobody likes shutdown defense better than I did. It makes you look good because, they're blocking shots, keeping guys to the outside, which they are doing, which makes my job easier and makes me look better. So that is a huge plus. We know that playoffs is way different than the regular season. Referees kind of put their whistle away, so you can be more physical. You can hold at certain times. So you need D like that in the playoffs. We are built differently. The Leafs are built differently this year on defense. And Craig Berube used to play in the league. He knows every facet. He knows about character. He knows when guys are tired. He knows when guys are in slumps. And I think the players feel that. Also, he's won a Stanley Cup with a team that hadn't won a Stanley Cup since 1967, the inception of the St. Louis Blues. So all that is going for them, no question. And last thing that I'll add to that is they have a different dance partner this year. No Boston or Tampa Bay. Those may have got in the heads of or been ghosts of some of these players past. So you have a different dance partner this time, which bodes well for the Maple Leafs.
If I could ask a question of you, Curtis, when you're watching the game today versus when you played it, is shot blocking more important now, or was it just as important then? We just didn't really talk about it maybe as much.
Oh yeah, it's just as important, and I see it increases in the playoffs. You see it more. It is very important. It's an art. Guys try it in the playoffs. Sometimes they're not used to it, so they screen you sometimes. I used to give a hard and fast rule to my defense. If you're going down to get it, make sure it doesn't go underneath you. And if you're in doubt because if it goes underneath you, I'm totally screened. I cannot see the release. I cannot see anything. I'm blind. And if you're in between and you're not sure whether to go down or up, just keep your legs together, stand perfectly straight, and by the angle, I'll be able to deduce whether if it goes on your right side, it's going to miss the net. So I can cheat to one side most of the time and have a way better percentage to stop that puck. So I said, if you're in between, just put your legs together, and that'll help me out tremendously. So there's an art form to it. There's a communication between the goalie and the D. And when that happens, we're all on the same page, and it leads to less goals against.
So Curtis, Kevin kind of brought up a point there that I'd like you to expand on. I think it's going to be an emerging storyline here as the Leafs move through the playoffs, and that is, the effect a coach can have on a team. We're not in that room. None of us are, but you can certainly detect differences in the way Craig Berube goes about his business to the way Sheldon Keefe went about his business and Mike Babcock before him. In your experience, how much of an effect can the demeanor and the sort of just the general vibe of the coach have on a team?
It's huge. And it was a great point that Kevin made, because when you have a coach that's not panicking, and players can tell whether, your goalie's panicking or you're inside or your coach is panicking, he's worried about his job. Craig Berube gives off, and I'm not in the dressing room, but he gives off that vibe like, everything's going to be okay. I told you what to do. You just keep at it and we'll win. And when that is communicated without words, sometimes it's a calming effect. I think Kevin used the word calm, and I feel like Berube does give off that no panic situation. And, as a goalie, even if you struggle, it's a very similar position. We're kind of individuals out there, but you have to be calm in the eye of a storm, because your players look at you. If your goalie's panicking or your coach is panicking, they can feel it, and it's not a good thing for the team.
Okay, so let's take another reader question here. We've got one from Dinesh S. And Dinesh chimes in here, Kevin, and I'll start with you. do the Leafs have the depth scoring for this playoff run?
Well, I think so. I mean, they had 6 guys hit at least 20, and you've seen Morgan Rielly score twice, Ollie scored once, and Max Domi scored your overtime winner. So, Austin Matthews hasn't scored yet, and they're up 2-0. I think they've got I like the way Craig Berube uses his lines. Like, he'll use the Domi, Robertson, McMahon line when he needs offense, and he'll sit them a little bit more and play the other guys, Yarncroc and Robert and Lawrence and Lawton when he's more worried about holding a lead. So he's got some guys that can explode. Robertson can score. He scored down the stretch. And if they're going to start getting goals from defensemen, which they really didn't get all year, I think that bodes well for them. The defensemen got the green light to join the rush from what I can see, and I think that's a good idea.
Curtis, how do you see it?
Yeah, I think when you play defense to win with your forwards and your D, the style that Craig Berube is instilling in this team, you don't need a lot of scoring, as we can see, 2-1. And also, great point by Kevin that Austin Matthews hasn't scored, and Nylander has 1. So I feel like definitely enough. The way they're playing, definitely enough scoring. And how about Morgan Rielly, scoring goals in the playoffs again, which is great. He's got a knack for this thing. So let's hope that keeps going. And you need goals from the defense to win games. You got to get it to the net. So those are all positives, and definitely they have enough scoring in my estimation.
Okay, well, let's expand on that a little bit, fellas. I mean, Curtis, I'll throw it back to you. The fact that Matthews hasn't scored in the playoffs yet, it's 2 games. I know it's a very short sample size, but we've also seen this year where he had a fall off in his production after the previous year's incredible 69-goal outburst. What have you seen from Matthews this year that has sort of made him a less explosive scorer at the very least? And, what do you think the Leafs need from him as they go forward here?
Austin Matthews needs to be a leader, and I saw him yelling at somebody yesterday, and the goals are always going to come from him, and he's the game breaker of game breakers. When you have the biggest game breaker, you can play a close game, and Austin Matthews and Nylander are going to score goals. So he needs to be a leader. He needs to play great defense like he has. He needs to play the body, big man, and lead by example. I remember playing in the Olympics with Mario Lemieux, and he would take the shortest shifts when we had a lead, and everybody followed. So when your best players is doing the right things or leading by example, he needs to continue to do that. And he is doing it, so it's great.
Kev, what's your take on the way Matthews is conducting himself so far in this series?
Well, I mean, it'd be good to see him score. That's for sure, because I think any goal scorer, you want to get that puck over the line, and it just gives you that confidence to carry on forward. But I haven't seen his game lacking at all. Like, he's winning faceoffs, he's winning puck battles, he's getting the play going the other way. I think he's got 3 assists. I mean, he made a brilliant pass. I think it was to Mitch Marner in the first game to set him up for that breakaway. So he's doing all of those things. And if Curtis is noticing the other things that he's doing that hockey leaders do, like making sure all the players are in line with each other and not taking elongated shifts and things like that, then he's doing what he needs to do. But yeah, he should score a few.
Without a doubt, Kevin. Curtis, we got a question here from Paul I. And he brings up a phrase that elite athletes talk about a lot, and it's about Stolarz and how Stolarz seems to be in the zone. Stolarz seems to have that hot hand, and that's a phenomenon that's been studied by psychologists and various other scientists many times. You've been in the zone. We've seen it both for and against the Leafs in the playoffs. What's your take on being in the zone, and how did you as a competitor sort of try and foster getting there more often?
Well, playoffs is very conducive for guy getting in the zone because you play every other night, and the day you're not playing, you're just resting and you're recovering. So you can get on a roll more easily. There's not 4 days and travel between games, so it's more conducive to get in the zone. And when you're in the zone, the crowd is there, but you don't see them. You can hear them, but you don't see faces. And if you're seeing faces and people moving around and guys selling beer up there, you're not in the zone, and that's not a good sign. So he definitely is in the zone. And I look for little things for confidence or non-confidence. And I saw a play last night where he's handling the puck extremely well, and I love that about him. He makes great plays, and he helps the D. He made one pass, which I wouldn't recommend. I wouldn't recommend. He went on the he didn't go around the glass. He went on the inside of, I think it was Craig, and he went right by his ear, and he kind of missed it. But when a goalie is making those plays, it's a little riskier. He's feeling it. He's feeling great about his game. So I wouldn't recommend that pass too many times. But when I see him make a play like that, I'm like, oh, okay, he's feeling it. He's got confidence. I like it. I like my goalie to be feeling it like that. So the other thing, too, is he's playing the puck extremely well, which is incredibly helpful for his defense and getting out of the zone. So those are a few things I notice about his game.
If I could ask you a little something about goalies. So goalies always have this reputation of being oddballs, of being different, like they're not like the rest of the players. Stolar said the other day, maybe about 4 or 5 days ago, that he is very much aware of the goaltender stereotype, and he's doing everything he can to go against it, to not be the oddball goalie. Oh, he's a goalie sort of thing, to be one of the guys. Is there anything to that about goalies? Like, were you, oh, he's a goalie? Was that sort of a thing? Like, what's your take on the, oh, he's a goalie sort of mentality?
Yeah, exactly. So I was, everybody did say to me, this is the feedback, hey, you're so normal for a goalie. I'm like, well, just myself. But luckily I didn't have a lot of superstitions, and I didn't believe that if my stick fell off the wall or, somebody touched my equipment, that I'd play a bad game. That's a tough way to live. So I was the complete opposite. I remember one night playing for the Leafs, and our bus broke down, or we were in traffic, and we got there. They had to delay the game, so I was stretching in the aisle of the bus and just having a little fun with it and joking around. And it was a Monday night in Columbus, and I think I was first star that night. So always, if something, and generally things, not everything goes your way. So I saw myself as a pretty normal guy. You can endear yourself to your teammates that way. You get invited to dinners more often. So he's got the right idea. And goalies are neurotic, and they're different, and they're strange, and they can be like that, which is fine. But I was never that way, and I'd recommend not being that way. So he's on the right path as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, let's take another reader question, guys. Kevin, I'll throw this one to you. Obviously, Maple Leafs power play, slumped a little bit last night. It took them 18 seconds off a faceoff to score a goal after scoring 3 goals. I think, 8 seconds, 9 seconds, and 3 seconds after faceoffs in the opening game. We all know about 1 for 21 against Boston last year. It's essentially the same guys, although a different configuration. What stands out to you as the biggest difference in this power play?
Right now, I think it's confidence. I mean, they're just moving the puck so quickly, and they seem to know what to do, and they're shooting. Like, when they're forever passing the puck around the perimeter, trying to set something up that, as Pat Quinn, I think, famously said, they're trying to pass the puck into the net. They're not doing that. They're just being a little bit more proactive, and I think they fully realize that game one aside, power plays are going to be hard to come by because of the refs. The players get a feel for what the refs are. The refs get a feel for what the players are. And, 2 power plays in the game is all you're really going to get. And you got to make the most of it. And I just think they're confident, right? I also think Matt Nyes is just a beast in front of the net. And Tavares is hit another level. Like he's desperate to win. So that combination right in the dirty areas, I think, is what is the best part of the power play.
And that question, by the way, was from Glenn E. And Curtis, following up on that, I mean, when you look at this Leaf power play and the talent that's on it, the 5-forward configuration, looking at it through the goaltender's perspective, how do you see it?
Well, definitely you want to get the puck to your shooters, and that's how most power plays are configured. They're the go-to guys. They deserve to get the puck, so you really have to focus on them. You have to have your defense focused on staying close to, an Austin Matthews, because he can beat you with a shot more easily than anybody else. So, yeah, when I'm trying to defend, the Jaromir Jagrs or the Austin Matthews, you always tell your defense to stay really, hug the guy, let anybody else shoot but them. But, I want to expand on that confidence, and I think it stems from the coach. The coach going, you're going right back out there. If you go 0 for 5, you're going right back out there. And when the guys have that confidence, and that's a little bit like Pat Quinn used to coach, our skilled guys could turn the puck over at the blue line, but they were getting another chance. They were going right back out there. Sergei Berezin may have turned the puck over too many times, but he also scored some huge goals. So there's that give and take. And I think Berube understands that the way Pat Quinn understood it. So I think, having that confidence of your coach, you're going out there, you're our best players, and we're going to live and die by you. So enjoy the moment.
Yeah, it's a great perspective, Curtis. Thanks very much. You know what? There's another great reader question here that kind of dovetails from that, from Brian C. Because as much as, I agree with you, Curtis, Berube can be a great giver of confidence, but he's also a straight talker who's not afraid to give, constructive criticism publicly. And we've heard a little bit of that specifically aimed towards some of the members of the line that includes Max Domi, Nick Robertson, and Bobby McMahon. And the question is from Brian C. And he's asking Kevin, when they go to Ottawa and they don't have the last change, do you see that as a concern that Berube might need to change this line?
Well, if Berube wants to change that line, he will. He's already changed it once. He's flipped Domi and Holmberg around. I think that line sometimes gives you the heebie-jeebies defensively, and you probably don't want him out there against Stützle, but that's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to learn to play that way. Max has become a pretty good face-off man. And Nick Robertson has shown me sort of in the last half of the season that he can actually play quite a physical, aggressive checking game. So he was the one guy that I kind of thought might not make the team for the playoffs, with Max Pacioretty ready and David Kampf ready. And I do wonder, that's a good point by the reader, whether Craig is more worried about maybe a defensive matchup and you might see Kampf in for somebody. But that line has been explosive, and when they get the matchup they want, they can be hard to handle, especially with Bobby McMahon's size and speed. I'd like to see him use that a little bit more, but that's the sort of the one line that you kind of look at and you go, what's going to happen here? It's either going to be very good or they might take a risk, those so-called hope plays that Berube doesn't really like. I'd say that would be that line there out against the wrong Ottawa line could be good news for Ottawa.
Interesting point, Kev. We lost Curtis there for a moment. I'm sure we will bring him back. But, further to Brian C's question about that line, I mean, I wonder, we were sitting next to each other in the press box last night, and when I saw Nick Robertson take that offensive zone high sticking penalty that led to a power play goal, I said to you, man, that could be the play that gets Nick Robertson taken out of this lineup for Game 3. And I'm not sure if that's going to happen. You pointed out a couple of great options for Craig Berube in David Kampf, in Max Pacioretty. I really felt like, Pacioretty was sort of on the tip of Craig Berube's tongue as he made his opening game lineup. He really wanted to put him in there. and yet didn't because the team had been playing so well. What's your take on Craig Berube and maybe messing with a thing that's working? When you've won 2, is there an aversion by a coach to change anything given the results?
Well, I'll give Berube credit because, like you, I kind of thought we're going to see Max Pacioretty sooner rather than later. But the team finished 13-2-1, and basically with the lineup that they had, at least among the forwards. I know the defense were injured, but they won their last 5 games with this lineup. And so, to Berube's credit, he just said, "Well, let's just keep going with these guys," and now they've won 2. So, I brought up, in the last segment without Cujo, we brought up the idea of Wall just coming in because it's his turn in the rotation. You thought that was a dumb idea. So maybe it's an equally dumb idea to think Pacioretty should come in while, these 12 guys among the forwards are doing what they're doing. They're playing winning hockey, whether they're having some struggling shifts or struggling periods, sure. But at this point, those guys, I mean, the guy that I've been really impressed with, we're as I said to you last night, if Pontus Holmberg had any kind of hands, if he could score, he'd be a dangerous player. But he's doing all the right things. He's the only guy drawing penalties. He drew as many penalties as Nikita Kucherov this season, and in half of the average ice time. So he is one of those coach's favorites. He does what the coach wants. Can't score. He's got a shot that's whatever. But I guess in Berube's mind, he's got a mix that's working, and he's probably not going to mess with it unless A, there's an injury that we don't know about, or B, I think if they lose a game if they lose game 3, I could see you sort of coming up with a line change because those guys are all ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, that you make a lot of great points there. Look, just to clarify, your idea of load managing the goalies and throwing in Joseph Wall just for the sake of giving Stolarz a rest, I think that's on a different scale of lineup adjustment to tweaking a forward line. Okay, to me, there's no contest. Like whether or not they put in David Kampf for Nick Robertson, what's that? Does it really matter? I mean, I guess if one of them scores a big goal or makes a huge play that wins the game, maybe it could. But I think changing the goalie, speaking of the hot hand and the zone, as we were with Curtis there shortly before this question, I wouldn't go away from the hot hand personally. But anyway, let's keep moving here. Obviously, thanks for joining us here on the Toronto Star Leaf Playoff Live Chat, brought to you by our presenting sponsor, the very generous folks at Chop Steakhouse and Bar. As we mentioned off the top, at the end of this whole thing, all the registrants will be entered into a draw for a great prize here. It's a $250 gift card at Chop Steakhouse and Bar, plus, Kev, a couple of Leafs jerseys. I mean, this is an incredible prize, and I know it's worth registering just to get the prize, let alone hearing us, eloquently blabble. What did I just say? That's what I'm trying to say. We barely even know the English language. So thanks for joining us. And anyway, Kev, we got one more question here from a reader that intrigues me. Now it's a very positive Wednesday here in Toronto. Obviously, with the Leafs up 2-0 in a playoff series for the first time since 2002. But if we got to get a little critical here, if we want to take our scalpel to the team a little bit, Americo O asks, what is Toronto's weakest link?
Oh, that's a really good question. What is the weakest link? Well, I guess we sort of talked about it because, I think the Scott Laughton line has been very, very good. I think they're doing what they're supposed to do. And I think the top 2 lines are scoring and the defense are doing what they're supposed to do. So we come back to the Domi, McMahon, Robertson trio, which is, this is McMahon's first playoffs. Even though he's been around a while, he's been injured for all of them. Max, I think personally, is more built for the playoffs. He's got this reputation as sort of a Alex Galchenyuk type in terms of some of the mistakes he'll make, but he doesn't seem to make them in the playoffs. He had a really, really good playoffs against the Bruins last year, and I think he's just he builds his game as the season goes on. He didn't score early, but he started to score later, and now he's something. But Nick Robertson's size is always an issue, and like you said, he took that penalty 200 feet from his goalie last night, so he can get a little bit sloppy that way. So that would be, to me, is that the third line? Is that the fourth line? So that to me is their weakest link. I don't think, and I think that's a second line on a lot of NHL teams. So they're in good place. I think they outmatch the Leafs bottom six outmatches Ottawa's bottom six. And so even coming back to the Domi line, they can be offensively explosive. So even though you might not trust them as much defensively, they can still put it in the net and hurt the other team's much weaker links.
Another question from Ian S. And it sort of dovetails in what we were talking about earlier about, the possibility of lineup changes. But Ian asks, will Pacioretty play in the first round? And, aside from, sort of speculating about the coaching staff's decision, which I think we've done in full, what do you think a guy can bring at age 36 who hasn't played since early February, who wants to board the proverbial moving train of a playoff run here on April 23rd, 24th?
Well, to me, my eyes are really opened with the guy in the first part of the season. I thought he had a pretty good start to the season. And I remember him in Montreal, but I don't remember him being as physical as he was with the Leafs to start the year. And he told me one day that he can score or he can play physical. And he thinks there's enough scorers in Toronto. He was going to play physical. And that takes a lot out of him. And I presume it's sort of contributed to what cost him the remainder of the season. But that's what he brings. He'll bring some savvy, but he'll bring a physicality to whatever line he plays on. So if they think they're lacking in physicality, I think that's what Max Pacioretty would bring. What about you? What do you see as the advantage or disadvantage of swapping in Pacioretty for somebody?
Yeah, look, man, I'm with you. I did not see the physical beast Max Pacioretty was when he first arrived on the scene here in Toronto. I did not know he played that way. I hadn't seen him play that way previously. And I thought it brought something that the Maple Leafs could really use and did really use very well. And I thought I was astounded that a guy at this age with this background of being to me, a guy who's primarily been a goal scoring player could really destroy people out there. He really lays the body in a very definitive way. So
it reminded me a little bit of Jason Spezza. Spezza was never very physical, but he changed his game to fit in better as he got older. He learned to be a checker. He learned to defend. Pacioretty and Tavares, to me, that was gold. It was like 30-year-olds just living the dream. Like, we're still in the NHL. We can still do this. I personally, that's where I'd put him, on that left wing. But we'll see if he ever. I think we'll see him before this series is over.
Oh, I'm sure we're going to see him. I really don't doubt we're going to see him. I guess if it was a sweep and Berube didn't want to kind of mess with what was working, maybe we wouldn't see him. But, if you believe the Senators can get back in this thing with at least one win, I think it'll be and I'm not even sure they need to get a win for Berube to make a change, as we've discussed here. But look, I really believe that there's a certain, you talk about the hunger of John Tavares at this stage in his career. I think Pacioretty has that same hunger, and it's impressive to look at. You don't come back from 2 Achilles tears to play this sport if you don't have a deep yearning to do more and do something more than just play and earn a check. I mean, this is a pursuit for him that I think means a lot. And he's saying all the right things. We had a chat with him before the series began, and he didn't want to make it about himself, and he didn't even want to talk about himself and his own physical sort of journey getting back to game readiness. But by all accounts, he is game ready. And I do think we'll see him. So anyway, we guess we've lost Curtis here, unfortunately. So hopefully we'll get him back. We got about 15 minutes left in the chat here. Kev, we got a big picture question here from James K. Goes well beyond the scope of this first round series, but it always hovers over the Maple Leaf Nation. And the question is, of course, did Harold Ballard put a curse on this team?
Well, his ownership acted like a curse. I mean, until I remember I covered some of those years, and it was the Leafs were you you couldn't believe what you were seeing sometimes with Harold Ballard. So his reign, the end of his reign anyway, like that 70s team was a really, really good team. That was, can you imagine it with Paul Henderson and Dave Keelan on top of, and Blaine Stoughton and Ricky Lee, the guys he just let go to the WHA for no good reason other than he didn't want to pay them. That team could have beaten Montreal with those players, with Daryl Sittler and Lanny McDonald and Tiger Williams and Mike Palmateer. So I don't know if he necessarily put a curse on the team, but his ownership reign certainly felt like a curse. Cujo, do you remember those Leaf teams?
Oh yeah, no, I remember. I was a young man, and yeah, a curse can be a lack of spending or a lack of will to win over, making money. So I do remember them, and Mike Palmateer was one of my favorites. Clearly, he was athletic. He was exciting to watch. So those, I remember it fondly, and brings back memories of my childhood and great memories of my childhood.
Yeah, Boris Alming was always my guy. I like Daryl, I like Lanny, but Boris Alming was the one guy. I remember when I met him later in life. He's the one guy that I would go gaga. I don't go gaga over anybody, but him I would.
Yeah, well, that's the Ballard Curse. We just saw the Jason Priestley produced documentary on the Ballard Curse, which I would recommend. It was a fun watch. Plenty of lore there. But Curtis, I wanted to ask you something. We were talking about the zone and trying to sort of immerse yourself in a playoff series. And I have a vague recollection of speaking to you back in your playing days about your routine. And am I wrong to believe that even in home games, you would sequester yourself in a hotel downtown to sort of try and foster that sort of feeling?
No question. That and driving in traffic. You didn't want you didn't want any frustrations or any negative energy to enter into your realm. You wanted to stay positive and stay focused. And I remember fondly about just being in the zone. Like, even if you're at home with your kids, like, doing things, you were thinking about the game. It was always in the back of your mind. You were looking at your watch. I need to be in bed. I need to get some sleep. You were there, but you weren't there. You were always at the rink. You were always preparing for the game, in playoffs especially. So yeah, I would go to the morning skate, and then I would just walk over to a hotel and sleep for a couple hours, get focused, walk back, and just be in that complete zone, because that's what it takes to be good in the playoffs. And it's usually a 1-goal game. I can see 1-goal games happening, for the rest of the series. So you got to be 1 goal better than the other team.
On that note, Joe, I talked to a few goalies over the time, and the whole world is delved into fancy stats, high danger chances, high danger save percentage, and stuff like that. But I've had a few goalies tell me that all that really matters is 1 goal. You have to be 1 goal better than the other guy. So, the other night, I was watching the Oilers come back against LA, and I was feeling good for Skinner, because I thought, he'd given up 5, and he didn't give up he gave up the 6th eventually, but the team got back. All he had to do was try to be 1 better than Kumper at that point. Kumper did it. They scored a fluky one on him. But is that the mentality of a goalie? It doesn't matter if it's 2 or 5 or 7, as long as the other guy gave in 3 or 6 or 8.
So yeah, when the goals are scoring on you and you feel maybe your confidence is waning, you go to that. You go to 1 goal better. I got to be 1 goal better. It's like golf, 1 shot better. When you start games and you're feeling great, it's like, no goals tonight. No goal, 1 goal tonight. So you make adjustments just like coaches make adjustments. And we were talking about the lineup earlier, seeing whether the Leafs have a weakness. We haven't seen a weakness yet in the Leafs. It's 2 games in, and you will as the playoffs go on. But yeah, if the goals are getting up there as a goalie, you're like, I got to be 1 goal better. So you adopt an attitude that's going to work. That's going to work for the situation. It's going to work for you. I always tell my kids that when they have to do something they don't want to do, I'm like, adopt an attitude that's going to work. And they find a way to do it. So it's a good skill to have, and it's a good skill to teach.
Curtis, before we got cut off there, I had one on the tip of my tongue for you. We've talked a lot about Anthony Stolarz and his confidence at the moment and his great play. Down the other end of the rink, you've got a guy that is a Vezina winner in Linus Ullmark, but who, to my eye, and I'm not an expert, does not look particularly confident right now. It looked like he was swimming around in the crease a little bit at certain points of this series. What do you see from Ullmark, and what do you expect as we head to Ottawa for Game 3?
Yeah, so if I was him, I'd be, well, I just was nervous the first game, didn't have a good first game, had a great second game. Third game's going to be even better. So you adopt an attitude that's going to work. So he may even break it down to, like, I had one tough period. And that's what you got to do as a goalie, to keep your confidence at an all-time high. His numbers don't look good, but if you break it down to a period, you're like, I had one bad period, I was a little nervous to start. And that's what you do as him. So he played very well yesterday. So that's what I'd be thinking if I was him.
What have you seen from Ullmark, Kev? Is he as kind of diminished an asset as some of us think he is, given, it was 2 years ago this spring, he was up 3-1 on the Florida Panthers as a member of the Boston Bruins. Then he gave away Game 5 with a bad turnover behind his net that allowed the Panthers to extend the series in overtime. Did not play great in Game 6 and got yanked in Game 7 in favor of Jeremy Swayman. And Swayman became the first goaltender in Bruins history to start a Game 7 after not starting in one of the previous 6 games. Do you think that's been the sort of death blow to his confidence, and can he get it back?
Oh, I don't think what happened against Florida a couple of playoffs ago is bothering Linus Ullmark right now. Probably his first and second period against the Leafs in Game 1 is bothering him a bit more. Like, Ullmark's had a very good season. I know he's got a reputation of being a little temperamental goalie in that he doesn't sound like he wants to play through an injury. He wants to be absolutely perfect rather than play through something. But his numbers for the year, they're all terrific. I don't think Ottawa is in the playoffs without the goaltending they got this year. And I know that wasn't all him, but I think he settled them down and gives them confidence. So the other night when Ken Campbell asked about the elephant in the room being Linus Ullmark, and Travis Green saying that he loves his goalie, there's no elephant in the room, everything's fine. I don't think everything that's added up from Ullmark in the past in the playoffs is necessarily on his mind. I think he's a good goalie. I don't think he's as good right now as Stolarz, and that's where Ottawa is right now. They get the second best goaltending in the series.
Curtis, we saw an interesting dynamic behind the Leafs bench in this series. There's been some great camera work done by the lead broadcaster when the Leafs score and how the coaching staff reacts. And I wanted to get your take as a guy who spent his life in and around benches and looking at the bench from the net more often. But, you had Craig Berube very stoic back there, and his assistant coach, Mark Savard, when the Leafs scored, I believe, the first goal of the series, really celebrating. Savard was a former player, guy who was in charge of the Maple Leafs power play. And Berube almost kind of, grabbed him and said, hey, what are you doing? Like, let's calm down. Let's act like we've been here before. Let's act like, we score goals. That's what we do. It's not that big a deal. How do you see that sort of stuff in terms of how you should act, as these really emotional moments are playing out in front of you?
So, yeah, the head coach is acting the right way. We've got a long way to go. I've been here before. I've seen this. Let's not get too excited. Calm down. That's how he is, because he's the man. He's in charge. He makes every final decision. Assistant coaches are a little differently. They're a liaison between the coach and the player. So they're buddy-buddy with the players. At practice, they do all the fun things. They don't have the pressure that the head coach does. So I'm okay with the assistant coach, cheering, because he really is closer to the guys. The head coach is the guy that has to make the hard decisions. You're sitting, you're not. So he can never show emotion, in my estimation. The assistant coaches, it's a little different. They're they're fully invested. It's hard not to get excited when you drop a play and they execute it and they score. I'm okay with the assistant coaches celebrating, but definitely the head coach is acting exactly how he should.
Yeah, what do you make of that dynamic?
Yeah, well, I love Berube, when the camera catches him and he's just sort of shaking his head or whatever it might be. You sort of think you know what he's thinking in those moments. I'd like to get to know the assistant coaches a little bit better than I do. That's kind of the issue these days. The reporters, we're not allowed to talk to them, but I don't mind them showing some emotion. Mark Savard, in particular, he took a lot of heat in this market early in the year when the power play was struggling the first couple of months, and I think he deserves all the credit in the world for going and sticking with the 5-forward unit that's working so well right now. So good on him, and good to see him celebrate.
So, Curtis, we got a few minutes left in the chat here. It's great to have you aboard because, you're the perfect guy to talk to on a day like today, because the last time the Leafs were up 2-0 in a playoff series, before this time, you were the guy in net. You had a shutout and you allowed 1 goal against in the opening 2 games against the Islanders. And that was a year in 2002 when the Maple Leafs made it within a couple of wins of the long-awaited Stanley Cup final that they hadn't seen since 1967. When you look back on that year, that playoff run, the 0-2 run to the conference final, I mean, what stands out about how close you came and what might have gone differently that could have put that team over the hump?
Yeah, I remember we had some injuries that year, but I also had broken my hand 6 weeks before the playoffs. So I literally didn't play until the playoffs. And that's a huge detriment, especially in my game. I like to play every night, like to always be on the ice. And that Islanders series was a great series. It had a lot of bad blood. It had a lot of hits. I remember focusing on my own game a lot because I wasn't as good as I should have been, probably until Game 7. Played well in Game 7, but up until that, I didn't think that I played that well. But it was a great series for fans. It was a lot of rock'em sock'em. It was fun, but we had a great run. I feel like we could have won a Stanley Cup that year. We had, some injuries and some untimely things, but we had a lot of depth and we had a lot of players going great. And that's one that got away. When you talk to players, they always think about the ones that got away. That definitely was a Stanley Cup that got away from us.
And Curtis, they brought you in as a mentor to Anthony Stolarz and Joseph Woll. I mean, given all you went through as a player and all the playoff games you won and lost, I mean, what would be the sort of bullet points of emphasis you would give to these young players as they attempt to make a run that long and hopefully even longer?
Yeah, it depends on the personality, and I certainly I get to know goalies and what makes them tick, just like a head coach would. He knows who can handle a little shove and who needs to be coddled a little bit. So my main focus would be to maintain the confidence of the goalie at the utmost and see what makes them tick. Every guy's different, as you know, especially goalies. You have different ends of the spectrum with goalies. But confidence is a huge thing. And when I see, Stolarz handling the puck the way he is, to me, he's confident. I look for little things like that, but it's a long run. You can't let any one game get you down. And you're playing for the Maple Leafs. It's a historic franchise. You have a chance to bounce back the next night and stop 45 shots for a shutout. And in my job as an ambassador, they remember the games that you played well. They don't remember the losses in Ottawa that I didn't play well. So I remind the goalies of that. And for a franchise like this, you can make history on any given night that fans will remember for an eternity. So that's the plus of playing in Toronto.
It's a great answer. Okay, fellas. Well, listen, it's been wonderful chatting with you here on the Stars Leafs Playoff Live Chat, brought to you by the Chop Steakhouse and Bar. We're going to round it out and wrap it up with one last question. It is the only question that matters at this time of year. It comes in from Cindy L. and many other readers who registered and so kindly sent in their feedback. I'll start with you, Kev. Is this the Leafs' year?
I'll go with yes. Why not? I for all the reasons we said, they match up well against Ottawa. They've got the better goaltending. They've got goaltending that can hold its own against whatever's to come. They've got 4 or 5 guys that who can break the game open. They've got a coach who's delivering the right message. I think, my dream matchup is, Florida and Tampa sort of killing each other, and then they can finally beat one of those teams. And then Montreal making it all the way through on the other side and have a nice, beautiful Montreal-Toronto conference final. And then, maybe LA comes through the other side as well. And you get a Toronto-LA makeup for 93 as long as Kerry Fraser's not refereeing final. There you go. There's your map. How do you like it?
Curtis, where do you see it?
Yeah, those are all great points. Coaching, goaltending, and defense are a big difference this year. And that's a lot. And I can see them going all the way, playing the Edmonton Oilers in the final.
Wow, wouldn't that be a dream final? 2 teams you played for, Curtis, and it would be bedlam, and it would assure Canada of its first Stanley Cup since 1993. So it would be a good news story across the country, and we're certainly in dire need of those these days. So anyway, thanks to Kevin, thanks to Curtis, and thanks to everybody who tuned in here at thestar.com for the Leafs playoff live chat. It's been a pleasure. Have a great day.
Thanks for having me, guys. Awesome.
Have fun.